Hey guys, how's it going? Sorry I'm in the dark. I'm recording this a bit early. You're probably listening to this as I'm already on the road to Atlanta, as I will be there. I'm going to do my best to do a live show early on Saturday and Sunday. However, I have no promises at the moment, although I would really like to do that. So we're going to be going over quite a lot in a very quick time frame. And as I said, I've been getting ready for the trip and everything. But I have made videos on Atlanta in the past. You can always find my stuff. That's why I always have BrandonCruzDFS at the end of my titles, just because you can type in whatever track you need and then specifically type in BrandonCruzDFS and it'll bring you up those videos. I have made several on Atlanta. Now, these are just my own thoughts, how I look at this, how I approach this race from a racing perspective and stuff like that. I might skip over things, and I apologize, but as I said, I've done long-winded videos on Atlanta in the past, and so on and so forth. Now, there are certain caveats of how different the 3 Series race. Now, with the trucks, there are a vast difference in terms of speed. Okay, the slower cars in the back of the field really have no chance at passing or even maintaining the positions or maintain a running position close with the rest of the pack just by how separated the field is. Now, with that said, we have had quite a lot of changes in the truck series between driver and teams and stuff like that. So we might see an uptick in what are perceived to be slower cars in the back of the field, maintaining a track position closer up, just because we have so many rookies and so many guys who quite possibly don't know what they're doing, especially because when we don't have practice and stuff, as truck practice was rained out for Daytona. We don't get practice for the super speedways anyway. We just go out there and qualify. A lot of these kids haven't had a ton of experience on super speedway type races and stuff like that. So I would expect the truck series to be quote unquote a snore fest. Okay, now everything's great in person, but I understand the TV makes this track look stupid and boring. But I would expect very little yellows in the Xfinity and the truck series race. Okay, Xfinity is going to come down to fuel mileage, as it usually always does. It just depends on when we get that last yellow in Stage 3. But for the most part, both these races should be fuel racing at the end of the races, due to how everybody drives. We're probably going to see single file racing and stuff for the most part. Now, yet again, going over a lot very quickly, but what's on your screen is what I have been kind of messing with since we repaved Atlanta in 2022. And that's tracking specifically Atlanta combined with the old Daytona before the repave. Okay, now I understand coming off this 500, there's discussions across the board on how viable plate racing is in terms of talent, in terms of luck, blah 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 blah, whatever. I've been on that. I've been swimming down that river for, if not half a decade now, if not longer. Okay. I'm not here to add on to that. Most people understand my view of the racing in general and stuff like that, whatever the case may be. But when I look at races that were interesting, fun to watch, understand, like so on and so forth, when you look at Daytona before the repave, before or with the 2010 Daytona 500, because they repaved afterwards since they had that, a pothole that brought a yellow out for forever. And I went ahead and just went back to 2001 Daytona 500. Okay, when you look at the racing between old school Daytona, okay, and the new Atlanta, okay, which yet again, going back to what they wanted to achieve at this racetrack, they wanted to achieve pack racing, but they also specifically designed it in the way they paved to, or in the way they designed this track, and in the ingredients and the composition of the asphalt that they use at this track to induce faster aging. Now, at this point, they might not do that again if they happen to repave, but they were terrified of this racetrack not performing or not showing what they wanted to, and then they're stuck with a new paved racetrack that doesn't age for several years. If you go back and just look at where we have been from 2022 to now, the track is way lighter, way grayer than what it was when they first paved. They introduced aging in the way they paved this track, okay? Because of that, we see bumps, we see handling becoming a major factor for this race, okay? So it's not only a situation to where, hey, you need to be a good driver and understand what you're doing, you also need to have a car that handles well. What do those also, driving well, when you look at who was good at Daytona, and I did not use Talladega because Talladega was much more open to closer pack racing and more intense stuff. Now, yet again, obviously, we could see 3-wide racing, even 4-wide racing at any point. Hell, go back and look at the duels from 2001. They're racing 4-wide at certain spots in that race, okay? But for the most part, the racing that you would see at Daytona in these years, go back and watch, go back and look, is very similar to what is being displayed at New Atlanta, okay? Now, the runs at this Atlanta are quite difficult to not only achieve but also block, okay? You pretty much have to take an entire lap to determine where, or to plan a run, but you also can't wait till the white flag because you don't have enough time. Typically, when people start runs and stuff, it's because they get a phenomenal, let's start finish line, whatever, right? Running, nose to tail. You sweep into turn one because it has a much more forgiving entry, okay? You can enter turn one a lot more aggressive and aim to either, dime in the corner or exit on the bottom and try and get a run on the guy down the back straightaway and then complete the pass entering turn three, okay? So, at that point, you've used from the start-finish line to turn three. If not, you were still side by side. If not, trying to get clear by the time you get off of four. It takes an entire lap to really make an entire move, especially at this point now that we're seeing less, pack racing and more single file, if not a bit double file, with everybody kind of running the top. Everybody knows that's where you keep the momentum and stuff. So when we're looking at this compared to old Daytona, that's how it was, okay? Hate to break it to you, people who've never seen a fucking race before 2023. We used to have real racing where skill was involved. I don't know why you're just coming to that conclusion now. But the reason why I have gone on this long-winded thing and why I haven't really talked about, because Xfinity or truck, we only have like 33 or so cars this week. Probably going to be, 15 competitive trucks, give or take. And then we're probably going to see, people, stragglers across the board or whatever. And then Xfinity, it's Junior Motorsports, it's Joe Gibbs, it's RCR, it's the guys you expect to be fast and everything. And then, when we get to Cup, why are we choosing, good plate racers? Why are we choosing good drivers? And as I said in the live show, which I think was probably one of the best shows I've done in my career, of going through every aspect of what makes somebody a good plate racer, and when I say good drivers or good teams or whatever, what exactly I'm going through when I'm saying that. If not, I would honestly rewatch the Daytona live show, okay? Because, with how everything ended up happening, the exact same mentality of how you would define who is a good play for DraftKings this weekend is the exact same thing I walked you through for the 500. Are they with a top team? Are they a driver who knows what they're doing on plate races? Now, what does that mean to you specifically? That could vary, okay? But just on the surface level, somebody who has managed quite a few top tens, who have avoided wrecks, okay, stuff like that. But even with that same thing, yet again, I'm going over a lot very quickly. Atlanta, I do not include in the Daytona and Talladega data. I believe this is its own animal that highlights drivers who are good at this style of racing, and teams that are good at this style of racing, that are good at setting up vehicles for this type of racing, and for, spotters and teams who know what they're doing, okay? That's why I don't include that with Daytona. Now, Daytona and Talladega, that, much more volatile, so on and so forth, but you still see good drivers get through. You will notice that those drivers usually perform well, if not more consistently, at Atlanta, because it is a much more of a driver track and team track, okay? So, somebody like, let's use like Stenhouse and Logano, for example. Phenomenal plate races, you would play them anyway. You would want to prioritize them also here. Yet again, if you look at how the ownership broke down for the Daytona 500, if we had a similar, or if that was, in fact, even the same grid that we would have for this weekend, you would play the same guys, okay? And in fact, you would play less of the shitters and bad teams because good teams and good drivers tend to perform better at this racetrack, okay? Yet again, I brought up Stenhouse and Logano for an example. I know that pissed off a lot of people. I don't know what else you expect. If anything, okay, when it comes down to races, this is where decisions are made. And, like, when you look at what Stenhouse did to Logano, okay? Sure, Stenhouse coming down is not clear. Comes down is not clear again. When that happens a second time, hey, Logano, I understand you might not like what Stenhouse is doing. I understand you might not enjoy what Stenhouse is doing, but you don't just purposely drive through the fucker and then wreck the field, okay? Stenhouse, why would Stenhouse learn from anything? Why would everybody be like, oh, Ricky Stenhouse wrecking again? What? He didn't even get, yeah, sure, had minor wreck, still continued. Doesn't even, his mistake, his dumb move, didn't even take him out of the race. You know who it took out of the race? You know what dumb move took it out? That was Logano staying in it, wrecking Stenhouse, because it not only wrecked Stenhouse, it took Logano out of the race, it took several people out of the race. If Logano lifts there, sure, you'd be like, oh, Stenhouse made a bad move. Yeah. If we wreck at the start, it's 100% Stenhouse. The fact that we made it down the back straightaway after 3 months, if anything at that point, 75% Logano's fault, 25% Stenhouse's fault. But people like that have a high upside, Brad Keselowski, Cindric, Stenhouse, Logano, William Byron, Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace, 2311, Denny Hamlin, just going off of, hey, the people you normally play at a plate race, those are also people and teams that you would absolutely prioritize here in Atlanta. Now, yet again, what you're looking at here is just average finish. Now, granted, I have been busy and I actually haven't been home for a couple days. This is my fault. Didn't finish the optimal. That's on me. Sorry I don't have the optimal for the last 2 races, okay? But we're looking at just the optimal lineups here. Now, we have had races where we had we had some races in under rain in Atlanta. We had, this first race here, we had no one knew what they were doing. We had 2 back-to-back pole sitters be optimal. But then once we migrate down, you might be like, oh, we want to chase the pole sitter or whatever. If we start looking at back of what the optimal would have been when we look at, all of these old Daytona races, we do see the pole sitter, hey, be optimal. There are races to where, we go green, we'll have a lot of wrecks, which I don't foresee us having, huge, gigantic track blockers at Atlanta. Now, we can. I'm not saying we won't, but when you look at the, the big one percentage of that, we necessarily don't have that, okay? So when we're looking at optimals, I would lean more towards how just, across the board these races kind of look, okay? We're still playing guys in the back of the field, and granted, this can be kind of swayed because the way that NASCAR sets things up. If you go to the rear of the field, you're counted by starting the rear here. And we're also including 500, so we have starting grid based off of duels as well. But there are a good amount of guys in the back of the field. Are we seeing full 6.6s? No. But we're seeing good 4.2s, okay? That is what what I would look at in terms of, building. If we're having good guys in the back of the field that, hey, have phenomenal plate racing experiences and finishes that support that type of skill set and stuff like that, that's who we want to play, okay? We're also looking at, when I look at average finish based on starting position, yet again, this is average finish at Atlanta, so these 6 races at Atlanta, these are the average finishes of the Daytona races that I have, between spring 2010 and spring 01. Rest in peace, Dale. I can't believe people still miss you. Dude, if the 7-time champion Dale Earnhardt just needs this, if he does this amazing thing called giving room to the inside lane, he's still here. We look at average finish combined between the 2 racetracks, and we're seeing that we see a lot of parallels, and I talked about this in a previous video during the offseason. We're seeing things pretty much line up pretty well between old Daytona and the average finishes of starting positions at the new Atlanta, okay? And so what does that mean? Hey, if we see, first off, guys in the 20s, probably good plays, okay? Could be for a huge amount of reasons, okay? But typically we're seeing that good guys and good teams just tend to be starting in the 20s, okay, for whatever reason. That's just how we've seen. But we've seen a lot of people be optimal in this range at Atlanta. We see a good portion of these guys have some of the better averages of where they're finishing, okay? We're also seeing quite a lot of guys in the, lower teens and single digits and stuff like that. Now, for me personally, yet again, if you look at Xfinity specifically, you've seen Austin Hill, you've seen Jesse Love. Now, Jesse Love and those guys ran out of fuel in one of the races, but we've seen a lot of wins from Austin Hill, a lot of wins from RCR, a lot of wins from pole sitters and stuff like that. Personally, for me, now yet again, anything can happen. But due to the fact that we have fuel mileage coming into play, the fact that we have, wrecks that can happen to anybody at any time and so on and so forth, and the huge thing that is the pit road here, if you pit under green, you're going 2 to 3 laps down, regardless if you speed or whatever the case may be. The fact that is so drastically high in terms of taking people out of the races, I will personally, whether it's a plate race or Atlanta, I will just not play the pole sitter for me I'm just not playing the pole sitter. Okay. Yet again, they've been optimal. These are videos about what I'm doing. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Last time I checked, I'm not making your lineups, okay? But I just never play the pole sitter at plate races and or Atlanta. I would just rather focus on getting guys who can also finish in the top 10 that also offer place differential and just hope, the guy starting first pays the rake. Like, for example, we're probably going to have RCR at the front of the field on Saturday, because we qualify Friday for 2 races. If Austin Hill or Jesse Love start first on Saturday, I'm not playing them. I'm gonna let the field play them and then just hope they wreck, despite the fact they'll be wearing a Jesse Love shirt. But when you're looking at yet again, dude, I'm doing my own shit. I don't watch other people's stuff. I have been hesitant on adding Atlanta specifically to the Daytona and Talladega data, just because I think it's its own beast. I think it's a hybrid, not in a sense of a 1.5 to a super speedway. I just think it's a hybrid in terms of it allows people who are good at these style of races to excel, because it lowers the volatility and randomness that we see in the Daytona 500, in Talladega races and stuff. Everything the drivers are bitching and moaning about, to be like, oh my god, I'm sure everybody's listened to the new episode of Actions Detrimental by Denny Hamlin, how much he's complaining about how talents, so on and so forth. Atlanta removes that. Okay, you need skill to be up front. You need a good team to be up front. You need that stuff. Okay, play the good drivers starting in the back or the midfield. Okay, and don't be afraid to play guys in the teens and stuff. But for the most part, I don't just want to be stacking the entirety of the backfield. I don't just want to be having, purposely one-offs of shitty teams or whatever in the back of the field. Also, secondly, update, as we saw in the 500, because this stuff is always, ever encompassing and always updating stuff. We saw a lot of people up front in these races that... Now, this isn't me being right or wrong, just addressing what happened in the Xfinity Series. We had nearly all of the rookies crash themselves in the Xfinity Daytona race, okay? Whether that was where they were running, whether that just happened, a lot of rookies ran into issues, okay? We've seen, in the Cup Series specifically, more guys who shouldn't be up front have been up front, and they've been doing okay. We saw Ty Dillon up front for a good portion of the race. I was very impressed with Corey LaJoie. At this point, we can say that, okay, he does know what he's doing, because we've seen him make mistakes in the past. The fact that he was able to be up front and control lanes and not make stupid moves, okay, we can move him to being incompetent and stuff like that. So those are also things you pay attention to, or when you're watching these races, of what people are doing. I'm not saying those are plays, or I'm not saying Corey LaJoie's a play. I'm just saying, speaking out loud, of who's showing the ability to actually control lines and do stuff. I would say Corey LaJoie is getting much more manageable at that, and so really any fears that I had of him in the past, or that I've explained, in the 500 week, I'm not really concerned about that going forward. Past that, I'm trying to think of other things. These are my main thoughts. Yet again, if you want more thoughts in more detail where I'm not, rushed to get out of here and stuff, I've done numerous Atlanta videos on this, and I believe I did some on my personal channel as well, but you can just type in, NASCAR Atlanta DFS, BrandonCruzDFS, I'm sure they'll pop up for you. That's mainly it. When I play this race this weekend, it's going to be really on, hey, are there Hendrick guys in the backfield? Probably want to play them. Hey, are there Joe Gibbs guys in the backfield? Hey, probably want to play them. And then, hey, who's starting in the teens that are, for Penske, or that are for RFK, and so on and so forth, and stuff like that. Like, I want to play a majority of good cars with good teams, good drivers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, that's mainly it. I'm going to be looking at, the average finish of these starting positions and understand that, hey, I probably want to be more aggressive. Now, yet again, kind of sidestepping now. We had a lot of new viewers and a lot of new people trying to understand the Daytona 500 and plate race and stuff like that. Now, yet again, I build for complete shit shows. I just happen to have, and even with the fact, I still had quite a lot of good lines at the end, but I had just a metric shitload of, Barry, Zane Smith, Truex. I was just overweight on everybody who was kind of underweight in the back of the field, and they all got wrecked out, so clearly we didn't entirely finish up front. But the same like I said, it should be very easy to determine ownership for this race as well when we go through and use the same things that we looked at the 500, whether you're using projections or an optimizer or whatever. It should lead to the same kind of builds as it was for the 500. Those are much more likely to work this week than last week, even though they did work last week. So a lot of chalk and stuff like that came through. Should be the same thing. So in terms of determining ownership and stuff like that, I personally won't be as aggressive on getting to guys who are lower owned. I'll just make sure I have, one or two one-offs and stuff like that, but it won't be full on like 6, off ownership guys hoping the chalk crashes here. I think there's a real good chance that a lot of the chalk comes through. You might be bitching and moaning about Denny Hamlin in this final race at Atlanta. He wanted to be conservative. He rode in the back, didn't get the wrecks. It happens. I build for wrecks. Sometimes they don't happen. Denny Hamlin knows what he's doing. Don't be mad at Denny because he rode in the back last week or last time here. What else? Handling's going to be imperative. Super, super, super important. We're probably going to see less 3-wide racing outside of certain times they got to push. We're probably going to see a single file and 2-wide for the most part. I would not be shocked to see, the first 8 cars, and really all these races, but for Cup specifically, first 8 cars be single file, and then we're kind of, double file for a bit for, 10th on back, and then back to single file and some double file. I think that's how it's going to be. Play the good guys, play the good cars. That's my advice. Like I said, I'll try and be live on Saturday and Sunday. Best of luck. I'll see you guys later.